Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 4 o'clock. So we'll get started for today. I want to confirm that we have a quorum present. I also want to note that since we have a couple of people present online, that Mr. Salva has all anything that votes you will be able to vote on today. So we can move forward on that. The other thing, do we have any members of the public online? Does it appear so?
We do.
We do? Okay, so Ms. Stewart, starting with you, will you introduce yourself?
My name is Memory Stewart. I live out near Hawthorne, actually at Grove Park. I'm a retired librarian, and I'm very concerned about the lack of access to internet.
Okay, thank you. And then another online person, Sherry. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, my name is Sherry, and I am currently at the Hawthorne Library accessing this meeting about many things with the rural concerns, but primarily the internet issues out here.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. We have a guest in person. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Nadia Lopero, and I live across the street, and I am mostly concerned about the low quality of our internet service.
Okay, well, welcome to all of you. I did want to note to everyone that this meeting is online. At appropriate times, members of the public will be allowed to comment on anything we do. And as I said previously, we have a quorum present, and because we have a couple of people online, we'll have Mr. Salva in a voting row. And then our members who are online, James, I see you up there. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm James Longenecker. I'm a member because I'm actively involved in agriculture and I live in Gainesville, Florida. It is a little echoey just for the people online. I at least am having a slight problem hearing.
Okay. Ken, is that just because
One thing is to hear it to the space.
We're getting that fixed.
okay, so the soundproofing of the ceiling hasn't occurred yet, so it may seem a little bit echoey from time to time. And it's understandable to me, but I do catch a little bit of the echo there. So we'll start out with the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move the agenda be approved or disapproved.
Mr. Hall moves, second.
Second.
Second by Gene Chance that the agenda be approved. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes unanimously. On chair's comments, I've only got one brief thing to comment on, and I just want to go back to 2 meetings ago, and I think it's Dr. Housh's, is that right? Came and visited with us, and she talked to us about some issues related to food and places in rural areas where people get fresh fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. She is new to the position. She said that she would like to go around with some people and see some areas, especially if they have places like that. And there was a lot of feedback from the committee that they'd be happy to show around and everything like that. So one of our concerns I think we should be always aware of is we volunteered to do stuff like that, is that we ought to follow up on it. So if anyone has that, and let me say that includes me as well, because she has an interest in heirs property, and the University of Florida does not have a program in that area. Florida A&M does. My contact with Florida A&M is not returning my emails, and I don't think they're around the office very much. So I haven't been able to hook her up with the Florida A&M folks that are doing that. But we need to keep that in mind and try to follow up when we say we're going to do things. That would be the only thing I have to say related to that. So, Ken, you want to say anything about the attendance report?
I'll just show it, and there's nobody that's currently, in any danger or as far as. If anybody has any questions, they can always ask us. I'm sure about it.
Okay, not hearing anything in that, we'll move on to the next section of the meeting, and that's old business. We're very happy that Tommy Crosby can join us. He's been a county employee for a long time. He's director of the Office of Management Budget right now, and he's also Assistant County Administrator. So welcome, Tommy. Glad that you're here with us today. And we're going to follow up with you on top of what we heard from the folks at UF on the broadband issue that's going on in the state. And maybe you can hone this down a little bit more towards the county.
Absolutely, happy to. Hope you're able to hear me. Let me know if that's a problem. So just to let you know where the county is with rural broadband, we have identified $15 million in our American Rescue Plan dollars for state and local relief for rural broadband. This aligns with one of the strategic goals of the board and the strategic plan. And we are going to leverage those dollars. Those dollars, unlike other federal dollars, these dollars are allowed to be used as a match for other programs. So there are other grant opportunities. FCC has several. U.S. Department of Agriculture has grant opportunities to roll out broadband. We just onboarded actually a broadband project manager. That's all he does. He has an administrative assistant. The gentleman we're getting from Virginia has worked on both sides on the government side as well as on the private side in rolling out broadband in several areas. He's currently outside of the Richmond area. So he'll be moving to Florida. He's already working online. He's about 20 plus years experience working on these projects, a lot of connections in the industry. So the first thing we're doing is we're also creating a regional broadband team in alignment with the Department of Economic Opportunity in Tallahassee. We're doing that really to put us in alignment or put us in line for money from the state, really. So they have a lot of boxes they need to check as far as what we're doing preemptively to identify the needs. You should see pretty soon, I'm glad Mark's on the call, but you should see pretty soon a survey or identification where people can go to get a survey of their internet connection in their areas. We're working on that together. We're going to roll that out through the local news medias so people at their home computer can log on and have internet speeds identified. That helps with the funding from DEO to identify those needs. The minimum expectation from the American Rescue Plan is 100 meg download and 100 meg up. However, the upload speed, they understand may take time to get to that level, but that is considered broadband, and that is our goal as we implement broadband. We're setting up the regional planning team, and we've identified some people. We're not through identifying everyone. Someone from this committee may be asked to be on the committee as well. That would make sense since it's a rural concerns committee. We'll get back with you as we identify those slots. We're also working, I say regional, because to get better access to those dollars, we are trying to partner with Levy, Gilchrist, Bradford, and Union counties. By making it regional is going to give us more access, should give us more access at the state level to those dollars coming through the state. There's also a lot of, go ahead.
Did you say Union County?
Yeah, Bradford, Union, Gilchrist, and Levy County.
Okay.
So the idea is, as the feds are rolling money out through the state, there's a lot of money also in the new infrastructure bill that was just passed by the federal government relating to broadband. So what we're going to try to do is partner, gives us more leverage, because obviously rural broadband is not an efficiency issue. I mostly relate this to rural electric, the rural electric authority. When that was rolled out, there are a lot of complaints that, it's not efficient. Obviously, efficiency is about the number of people you serve. Rural broadband is going to be more like rural electric. It's obvious that the impact of COVID and shutting down the government when people are trying to conduct business on the internet, education, medical services, that kind of shone a light on what needed to be done. So all that to say is we're creating that planning team. On another track, we will be looking at private partnership opportunities with those companies that are in the business. We have one challenge. The federal government has indicated that they prefer that most of the delivery of services, that the government be the deliverer of the services, be the internet service provider when possible. The state of Florida has some laws that limit that dramatically. So we will probably be partnering with someone. So we're looking at, we'll be looking at all of the different players in the market. GrewCom obviously has a fiber that goes to every school in the county as a basic loop. But we also have not only cell providers, but also other Windstream, Cox Cable, et cetera. We have also received many other interested parties that are in the business. So the first thing we're going to do is do our needs identification so we can support any type of request for proposals or request for qualifications or invitation to negotiate, or however we approach it. We will develop the team to work with DEO on their process for state dollars. And then we will start rolling out those requests to identify those vendors that can help us actually get this implemented. So just from a timing perspective, American Rescue Plan dollars have to be obligated by 12/31 of 2024. And then they have to be spent by 12/31 of 2026. So obviously we have a 4-year window to make this happen, at least with our 15 million. It may be a matter of a longer project where we use these dollars first and somebody else's dollars follow, but we're a long ways from tying all those loose ends up. But I think we have a strong plan of action, and what we are trying desperately to avoid, that's why I said we're going down 2 different paths, one with DEO and one outside of that path, is the path with DEO has a lot of team members from different sectors, and it becomes very bureaucratic in nature. And we are trying to avoid getting bogged down in bureaucracy and not rolling out and meeting the need that is evident everywhere. So that's kind of where we're headed, and that's what the county is doing. And the board has been 100% supportive of the initiative, and we're moving as quickly as we can.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions, and I'll start with a relatively easy one. So I believe the process that started is saying that there was supposed to be this local team. So is there going to be a local team to Alachua County, or is it just going to be this regional team with all these counties?
It's going to be the regional team. Our discussions with Katie Smith in the Office of Broadband is they believe that would be more successful in getting what we need out of the state, is to have this regional approach. So doesn't mean we're limiting our membership. Alachua County can obviously fill all the slots easily, but we can have more than one person in each slot. So we're going to have a regional team is what we're developing.
And how many people are you looking at on a regional team?
There are about, it's probably a minimum of 15, probably to 25 people. It's a large group. It includes the school system, library system, industry leaders, business leaders, elected officials. It's your typical, well, we call it blue ribbon panel. This is all underneath the state's purview of what they're trying to create. But having this team helps us access. So it's a rather large team, probably 20 members large plus when we're done.
Okay, and then this will be the last question, and hopefully everybody else is gathered in one like it. So, Commissioner Cornell was on the statewide Association of Counties special committee that formed this. And besides this local team that they had talked about, they also asked each commission to identify a local champion, and I know that's Commissioner Alford. So how does this all fit together?
Commissioner Alford will obviously be on this team as well. She'll be a member of our, as a county commission representative on the team. She's also working through, I believe, the Association of Counties delegation as well as the champion for the cause. So as the counties collectively have requests of the state and are working with the state, she'll be in that group as well. So she will be part of this regional team as we move forward.
Okay, other committee members had questions they'd like to ask Larry?
Yes, Larry Hall. Your group sounds like a top-down group. Will there be any addition of rural people on this committee? The people that would be most affected are most affected by the lack of internet to get their input.
Okay, I think what I heard was this is a top-down committee. Will there be rural representation for the people that need the internet? So I think that's what I heard. So one, the committee probably is heavily leaders in the community. I wouldn't say they're not rural, they're both. As I mentioned, it would probably be wise for us to add someone from the Rural Concerns Advisory Committee. That makes sense. This is a rural issue. The other 4 counties involved are all rural, even in their cities. They have rural needs throughout. They're identifying 4 or 5 of each of those industries or slots to be on the team as well. It looks like there'll be a good, strong cross-section of rural people on the committee. That is the need that we have. I think the top, when you say top-down approach of the committee, I think the idea from Department of Economic Opportunity, and I hate to speak on their behalf, I think the idea in the legislation was that the leaders elected to the school system, those involved with the county government, as well as industry leaders like the health arena, et cetera, are those that are those that understand the needs to push out education online, healthcare online, et cetera. Again, we're not strictly going down that one path. We are trying to work with the staffs of those other counties to get this to the rural areas. I am vastly concerned about bureaucracy slowing us down, and I've expressed that to DEO multiple times. The conversation, the best way to have an analogy, again, is with rural electric. This is not going to be more efficient. Every time we have these conversations, we hear, well, it's more efficient if we include this group or that group. You will never get the last mile done if it's an efficiency issue. This is an infrastructure cost loss issue, and on the back end, the idea is that there'll be affordable broadband. Affordable at this time is a $50 a month type bill for your broadband services.
Other committee questions?
Is this,
Go ahead, James. Is that you?
I think that is.
Okay.
just for the public? Yeah, this is,
Yeah. So I want to ask a couple more follow-up questions, Tommy. So when we talked about the folks from US that are putting together a program statewide, the issue came up on of not tying into a specific platform of delivery. Not low-flying satellites or whatever they might be, but the provider and the adaptability of the provider. So I guess one question on is that going to be the goal of this group? And since you're dealing with it on a regional basis and you've hired this director The committee is going to develop internal leadership to address some of these issues. And then my third question would be related to the fact, it's one thing having access to the internet. See, another thing, having access to computer equipment. It seems like the computer equipment is about as dire as the need for an internet, especially in low-income households. So is that going to be first?
I'm sorry, what equipment are you meaning?
Computer.
So
Households even have a computer, let alone the internet access.
okay, so no, this is not a device. I'll start answer the third one first. No, this is not a program about devices and connected after they get to the home. This is about running the necessary infrastructure so that the homes can be plugged in, so a device can be plugged in. Those would be other avenues and other approaches. The first question, I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. This committee, no, the committee is more helping with needs assessment and identifying where we would probably need to address what areas first and where, more so than the path by which we get there. Currently in the market, obviously there's satellite internet, there are cell phone towers, and there's fiber, et cetera. Currently is well recognized throughout the market that fiber is currently the only consistent deliverer of 100 meg up and down speeds. And most of the federal programs are tied to that fiber program. So there are some last mile efforts in some very rural areas where they've talked about pushing out on cell towers for that last mile, but that would be a very, very small percentage of the program. Most of the program is going to be fiber based, and it's going to be a provider that can use that type of infrastructure. One of a good example where this has been successful is in North Kentucky, in a partnership with Cincinnati Bell, who's the telco company, where they put in infrastructure in a P3 partnership, and the county put in so much, Southern Bell or Cincinnati Bell put in so much, and the agreement was obviously Cincinnati Bell takes over all the infrastructure, maintaining it, and there's a long-term agreement on rates to keep it affordable, to be required to be affordable, and how those are developed. So it is not free rural internet, it will be affordable by the terms that are currently outlined with the, I think it's in the American Rescue Plan Act, but I think the FCC may have something to do with it that I'm not positive about. But that's what that's the role we're trying to get to in the infrastructure we're looking at right now.
Okay, other committee questions?
I got a
Yes.
question. What's up, committee member? I guess one question would be, you mentioned sort of matching funds. Yeah, you seem to be doing a regional approach. So is you're going to try to match the federal funds on a regional basis, or each county is going to try to match what the federal funds for each county are spent? How are you planning on matching it?
Can you repeat the question for me?
How are you planning on matching funds for a federal grant if you're planning on a regional basis? Is each county affording a portion, or how are you?
How we're going to match the funds?
Yeah.
Okay, so under ARPA, the federal dollars coming through ARPA, the 15 million we've set aside, are allowed to be considered match dollars for other federal programs. So that will be our match for other programs.
So how does that matter? I still fail to understand. You say you're following a regional approach. So is Gilbert going to match something different? Are you guys going to what's going to
So when I say a regional approach is what we will roll out are basically, we call them cooperative bids or cooperative procurement, competitive procurement. Our $15 million will be for Alachua County, not for the other counties. But the bids and the programs will be set up where they can participate with the same companies as well. They would have to come up with their own match to roll it out in their counties. So, our money will not be going to support the other counties. It will be just for Alachua County. So we currently have, for example, we are currently have filed for an FCC grant for the north end of Alachua County from about halfway between High Springs and Newberry all the way over to Waldo with Windstream. Actually, there are no dollars required of the county. Windstream is going to handle the match if we get the grant award from the FCC to start rolling out some areas of broadband in the north end. So that's something we're doing. We actually did that before this committee ever came up. So there will be different pots of matching funds. There'll be different grant opportunities. Like I said, the FCC, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the infrastructure bill that just got passed by the federal government. There will be several pots that we will be after, in addition to private partnership agreements to where, whether it be Cox Cable, GRU, or GRUCOM, Windstream, AT&T, Verizon, whoever it may be, would come in and they would put money up as well to help build out infrastructure, because somebody's going to get the $50 a month for the residential units at some point. So there's a lot of money going into from different areas coming into the pot. Our portion that we've set aside so far is the 15 million to help us get this started with our share.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna, Larry, Paul.
Yes, I have one more question. In your last discussion, it sounds like you're going to be dealing with individual providers who have either territorial rights or franchise rights. So you will not have just one regional carrier that will provide service throughout this whole region. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that the traditionally Windstream, that's their franchise right. That's their area right now. Right now, a lot of the parts that are moving through DEO and the federal money are knocking some of those barriers down, or who we have to work with. So it may, the federal government would like us to be the internet service provider. The state has some statutes that prohibit that right now. We're working on how that's going to work out to get the federal dollars down through the state. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of service providers that are working in many counties in Florida that's not their contracted area. I am not knowledgeable enough yet to know exactly how that part of it is going to work, and we're still working on that part of it.
Based on an experience with my community with Windstream, what we understood and they proposed to us was that if you're using fiber, there are no territorial restrictions on fiber. If you're copper or satellite, there may be territorial restrictions.
Okay, good. It's good to know. And I hope that's the case. I know that right now there are a lot of, now that we've kind of announced that we're doing this team and that we have been publicly setting aside these dollars, I can tell you I've had many providers and installers contacting Alachua County already. And I know they are in Levy counties having the same type of discussions. So I'm sure there's some alternatives we're going to be able to work out. So that's good to know. And we're going to work through those issues.
I'm going to open it up to the public and we'll come back to the committee. Is there any questions from the public? And I'll start with you, Ms. Stewart.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Crosby, I'm encouraged to hear that you actually have a better understanding about what's going on out here. And the comparison to rural electric, having grown up in a very rural area and understanding about rural electric, I think that's a very good comparison. It's not going to be efficient, or and actually rural areas. My question is about the committee. Would there be possibly a seat at the table for? I'm retired and I'm on a fixed income, and I'm currently paying $250 a month for very spotty internet service from Verizon. I can never count on it. And I need to order my groceries. I'm just using myself as an example. I'm not whining, But I have neighbors who can't pay that $250 a month. We need access. You name some of the things that nobody else has touched on, our healthcare, our ability to sign up for vaccinations, ability to order online groceries, or, order groceries to be delivered or to pick up curbside, things like that are affecting us seniors and in the rural areas. So I wondered if there might be a seat at the table for seniors and the disabled. I'm newly disabled. I'm learning some things about being disabled I never knew before. Or would there be a possibility of team advisors from different rural areas to be able to feed information into the committees? Attending these meetings or being able to listen to these meetings, this is nice, but that's predicated on being able to get home internet service I set up the ability to use the Hawthorne Library as a location, but due to my disability, I was unable to get there today. I'm lucky that the sun is shining and the gods are shining on me and I have internet service today, but I don't know how long that'll last. So would there be any way for us to be able to have some kind of representation for each area and for people who are seniors and disabled to be able to have some input into this other than attending these meetings? First, the other thing about these meetings is I can hear Mr. Crosby just fine. I can't understand what's coming out of the meeting in that room at all. It's so garbled that I don't know what questions you're asking. I just know the answers he's giving. Thank you.
So then let me respond real quick to that, Mark. So one, just to clarify the role of the committee, it is not an advisory board of the county. So it is a committee made up of industry. It's more like, it's trying to think what it would be akin to, but it's not an advisory board meeting. Having said that, I am taking some note. It makes sense that someone from the rural areas be a part of the meeting, as well as someone from the senior and disabled groups. So that makes sense. So we'll look in some of those slots, adding some of those slots, but I don't want the committee to walk away with thinking we have another advisory board for the county, because these conversations aren't necessarily coming directly back to our county. They're going to come back to our county through procurement whenever we get ready to roll out grant applications and those kind of things. This is a committee that will meet and give suggestions to county staff. We will report out to DEO. DEO will be a part of those meetings as well, and help us get DEO what they need, so that when we get ready to apply for grants, we have the support of the committee and we have that information from the community leaders that we need.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to make a couple of suggestions on the technical aspects of this meeting. I was thinking about waiting till the end, but I'm going to have to run after my meeting is over. I would highly recommend that the folks in the room, if they have a laptop, that they bring it and that they sign on to the Zoom meeting, so that each one of you shows up individually in a window on the meeting. Mr. Chair, I'm having a difficult time understanding you and the gentleman that was speaking in the room. You might try moving a little bit closer to your laptop, Mike. I don't know if that'll make it better or worse, but I would also recommend that you experiment with earphones. If you have earbuds that have a microphone attached, that if you're all signed into the Zoom meeting, even though you're in the room together, and you're using those earbuds with a mic, that might help with your sound issues. Anyway, just some technical thoughts. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
No,
So
that's okay. So can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay,
still-
because I'm operating through a microphone in the room, not through my computer because of feedback.
Oh, okay.
So that's one reason you may be getting more of an echo. So I'll just sort of bend over here,
Well, I think you might want to consider turning the mics in the room off. You all are close enough together that you don't need amplification in the room. And I would suggest using just the Zoom mics if you're all on Zoom. So if everyone has a laptop they can bring, not only will it help us see you better, but we can't, hear you better, but we can't really see the other members. And they seem to be very far away and we don't see their face and their lips moving. Just a thought.
Right, and we only have 2 people in the room with laptops, so that's not gonna happen this meeting, so we can think about it. And obviously, because of the pandemic as well as some other issues, we've had to alter meeting locations, and this is the first time we've been in this room.
Gotcha.
So we know that the sound panels haven't been put on the ceiling yet, but they've been having meetings in here, so we wanted to try it.
Sure.
Is this at the new Ag Equestrian Center?
Yes.
Okay, so there should be the capability, I would advise, of a conference phone. We have had a lot of success with that. Everyone, you could all hear us a lot better and we could hear you a lot better through that conference phone and not having any other laptop mics up or anything. So that we have been very successful in having meetings like of the nature you're having, with the big triangular thing that sits in the middle of the table. That conference phone seems to work very well in this environment, just for a future note.
Right, and we will not have this issue next month because we're trying to, once a quarter, alternate our meetings, so we're gonna be downtown at Grace Night. So
Okay.
it should
All right.
be there on that. So one other question I wanted to bring up, and then I'll circle back around. So are you familiar with the reverse auction that the Federal Communications Group did on the internet provisions? So is the timing of the availability of funds and the next time they do the reverse auction? Because I think Alachua County, or maybe it was Florida, I forget, but they went at a fraction of what they were getting on bids. And I think one of the Florida contracts actually went to SpaceX on the low flying satellites and stuff like that. But they were getting stuff for about 1/3 of what they were getting on bids from companies. So do we know when the next auction is going to be, that reverse auction? Is Florida going to be prepared? Is Alachua County going to be prepared along with your partners to participate in that?
No, I don't have very little knowledge of that other than what happened from reading about it. So I can't answer that question. I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Okay, I think it might be worthwhile exploring if it's going to make money go farther.
Okay.
And then, my only other take is sort of, we're going to build something and hope people can come and participate. So we're worried about the internet, but frankly, I don't know how people do it, and they're very good if they do it. But I think we're generations away from when a cell phone is going to be a way we want to connect with internet, and we have to have equipment and stuff like that. And then I think the partnerships, I was reading an interesting case study of a state that was working on this system, and they've sort of already come up with their plan. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to try and expand the footprint of the internet around all the schools and all the public buildings. And then they're going to keep spreading out. And in a lot of ways, they're going to maximize the density of the people at the same time they're spreading out to try to get the most use. So, I think it's critical people think about that. And then the public utility group at UF, I think the interesting discussion we had with them is that because of the fast changing nature of the system, the internet system, is that, and I hope I'm not overstating that, but there's some danger to marrying into a platform that stays fixed and doesn't account for technological changes either through equipment or how things are delivered.
Okay.
And I don't know if anybody else in the committee agrees that's what we heard, but that's what I think I heard. So any other questions from the committee? Ms. Werner, you have one?
I'm sorry.
Do you have any questions?
No,
Cindy?
good.
Curtis? Jordan?
No.
Okay, well, we want to thank you for your time, Tommy.
Thank you for
Hopefully-
having me.
Hopefully keep us appraised. Has some people already been appointed to this local group?
No, we're still working on it.
Okay. So.
No, we're going to have a meeting with DEO probably within about a month. We're working on it now. So I appreciate the input today. It helps me to make sure that I am not leaving particular groups out that need to be part of the conversation. So thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us.
Have a good day.
Okay, and Mark, can you wait just a second? I realized I jumped over something in terms of business, and it won't take very long for us to do it. But we didn't approve the minutes of the last meeting and the workshop, or the workshop on 1/18 and our last meeting 11/18. Those were distributed by Regina on February the 4th, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. Are there changes that you see need to be made, or does someone want to move approval of that? Jeannie?
Move approval of minutes of November 16, 2021, and 1/18, 2022, which was a workshop.
Okay, it's been moved by Jeannie Chance that we approve those 2 minutes. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Werner. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, that motion passes. So sorry for jumping over that. And Mark, thanks for being with us today. We're going to go ahead and move right into you and your discussion about the proposed local bill in the legislature. You're muted.
You know, maybe after 4 years of using Zoom, I'll remember to unmute my mic. I'm the communications director for the county. I used to wear the legislative affairs director hat, but at my request, I've asked the manager to not do 2 full-time jobs, to just do 1, and she has graciously accepted that suggestion. However, during this transition year, we have hired a firm that is now acting full-time as our legislative affairs presence in Tallahassee. But because of the nature of this bill, the manager asked me to kind of, during this transition year, keep an eye on this bill in particular. And I'm speaking about House Bill 1493, filed by Representative Clemens. In Alachua County, we have a at-large commission system. Most counties in Florida have an at-large commission system. And what that basically means is there are 5 districts. There has to be a commissioner that lives in each one of those 5 districts, but all citizens or all voters in the county get to vote for all 5 commissioners. The county commission feels like that's a superior form of government because all county commissioners are accountable to all of the citizens. Another form of government that some counties have is the single member district form of government. And that means there are 5 commissioners that live in a district, and only the voters in that district get to vote for that commissioner. So you have 1 commissioner that you can hold accountable. In our view, it is a much more powerful tool to have 5 commissioners that you can hold accountable, and 5 commissioners that have the good of the entire county in mind when they're making decisions, as opposed to 5 commissioners who are competing to see who can bring the most back to their district. Representative Clemens wants to, he has filed a bill that would put a ballot initiative on the November ballot that would say to voters, do you basically want to move to a single member district form of government? And his thinking on it, or his rationale that he most often uses, is what's the big deal? Just let the voters decide. And to explain what the big deal is, Alachua County is a charter county. Back in the 60s, it became very clear that certain counties of a certain size didn't want to be governed by a legislature that meets 60 days out of the year. And they wanted to have certain powers that would allow them to govern best for 365 days out of the year. So Alachua County in late 80s, early 90s voted, our citizens voted to become a charter county. And the county charter is kind of the equivalent of our constitution. And when the voters voted to become a charter county, they also voted on the language of the charter. And the language of the charter said there are 3 ways to amend the county charter. You can make your case to the county commission. If you convince them, they can just decide to put it on the ballot. They can decide on their own to put something on the ballot to change the charter for the voters to decide. Every 10 years, there's a charter review commission that meets. And if you convince them, they can put it on the ballot. Or if a group of citizens wants to roll up their sleeves and not have to convince anyone, they can go the petition process, in which you would have to get 10% of the signatures of the registered voters in Alachua County. And by the way, that's been done many times. I think the most recent time was the airboat ordinance. They gathered enough signatures and they got that on the ballot, and it passed. What Representative Clemens is trying to do is bypass the county charter altogether and that process, and make it very easy to get something on the ballot. At yesterday's committee meeting, I pointed out that changing the federal constitution isn't easy, nor should it be. Changing the state constitution isn't easy, nor should it be. As a matter of fact, I pointed out to the body yesterday that they have in the last several years made it harder and harder for citizens to get a ballot question on the ballot to change the state constitution. And changing the county charter shouldn't be easy. What Representative Clemens is doing, in effect, is making it easy. And just a citizen asked him to do it, and he's doing it. And of course, our county commission is kind of discussing the motives behind that. And basically, there is a group of citizens, small but very vocal group of citizens, who every time the Charter Review Commission meets, they try to convince them to put single member districts on the ballot. None of the times that they've met have they convinced the Charter Commission to do that. They just didn't agree that 1 representative was better than 5. One time they actually started the signature process, but it's hard work. And for whatever reason, their effort kind of fell flat. They could not find 10% of the voters to sign on to the idea of cutting their representation by 4/5. The motive from our point of view is clear. There are some people who live in certain sections of the county who feel like single member districts would give them a better opportunity to elect a more conservative commissioner. And we don't agree with that analysis, but that seems to be the motivation. We pointed out to Representative Clemens yesterday that if he really felt strongly about counties should put forms of government on the ballot, we pointed out to him that his 2 other counties that are in his district, Gilchrist and Dixie County, they have the identical form of government as Alachua County. And they have Republican majorities in those 2 counties. And we asked the question, why isn't it necessary to put this on the ballot in those counties as well? So it's really I mean, there is a debate about which is the better form of government. We think at-large commissioners is the better form of government. But in a way, the more important question is, do we want representatives in Tallahassee to do an end around the county's constitution, the county's charter, and take something that should require some hard work and make it very easy? So we are fighting the bill, although we fully expect it to pass, given the makeup of the legislature right now. And voters are going to have a decision in November. We are allowed, once the legislation passes, and we fully expect it to pass, we are allowed to do a public education campaign. We cannot advocate for or against a ballot initiative, but we can do a factual public information campaign. I have heard through the grapevine that there are citizens who are already planning on forming a private organization to oppose this bill. So that is really our most important legislative priority right now. We don't have any appropriations requests this year because we had a really influx of federal dollars this year. We felt like we'd keep our powder dry on appropriations requests. We were very successful last year. We got over $2 million to help with the construction of the new regional sports center that we're building out at Celebration Point. So we didn't do an appropriations request this year, which is probably a good thing because we are opposing this current bill by Representative Clemens very enthusiastically. So it probably wouldn't have been a good time to do an appropriations request. But that's the basis of it. I could go into even more detail, but I think I'll stop here and see if there are any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to open up the questions from the committee. Who has a question?
This is Janet. I have a question.
Yes.
And Byrne, you're recognized.
Thank you. Does the bill require that in order for the single member districts to go into effect, that it has to pass a referendum first?
Yes.
So it's not a done deal if the bill passes. It's just puts the matter on the ballot.
It is not a done deal by a long shot, and we fully expect it to pass. Yeah.
And so then that will go on the, what is it, November 8th ballot?
That's correct, of 2022, yes. The gubernatorial
So what really
election.
okay. So what got bypassed was the Charter Commission.
Yeah, there are, when our voters adopted our charter, they said, if you want to get a initiative on the ballot, or excuse me, a charter amendment on the ballot, these are the things you have to do. This group that approached Representative Clemens decided they didn't want to do any of those things. They've tried convincing the county commission and been unsuccessful. They've tried convincing the charter commission 3 different times and have been unsuccessful. And apparently they don't want to do the work that it takes to get the proper number of signatures to place it on the ballot. So they found a much easier way to do it by going to Representative Clemens.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that it still had to go through the election process.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Other committee member questions? Larry?
Yes, Mr. Sexton, Larry Hall, member. First, I'd like to make a clarification. I have not or have never been affiliated with any splinter group or small faction who is trying to get Mr. Clemens, Representative Clemens, to put this on the ballot for the county. However, from my perspective as a member of the community, living outside, actually in the Alachua area, this committee, at the last time the Charter Commission was meeting, voted to send a letter which was sent to the Charter Review Commission, which they chose to ignore and did not entertain for single member districts. The issue that I see from my perspective and from many others that I hear from in the rural areas is our county is unique in the respect that the center of population is like a wagon wheel with 5 spokes. The population at the hub of the wheel controls the elections And the people who live out in the areas near the rims of the wheel have little representation. To be elected as a commissioner of this county, you only have to convince the people living within the suburban and city areas to vote for you, which is primarily the progressive and the rural communities, and you're elected. The thought was that with single member districts, it would be an opportunity for that particular candidate to actually go out and meet with people who are not in that hub to get their input and seek their vote, as opposed to just being able to get elected with a small majority from a small area of the county. I think that while I understand your opposition and the county commission's opposition to Representative Cummins, it seems that that may be the only way for citizens outside that central hub to be able to have an expression. Whether or not it carries, I don't know, but I don't see that it's that big a deal that it be on the ballot, which is going to be an election anyway. There should be additional funds, and I don't see that the county should spend exorbitant amounts of money to try to convince people to vote against it. Those are just my thoughts.
If I may respond, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I missed some of that, but let me kind of respond on what I thought. I agree with you that the motivation is to figure out a way to elect a different kind of candidate, or yeah, to elect somebody from the more rural area. As far as spending dollars, we won't spend dollars once it's on the ballot. We won't spend taxpayer dollars to advocate for or against this. That's against the law, and we won't do it. I think there are others in the community that will do it. As far as our relationships with people in the rural area, and the notion that the people living in the rural areas have no representation, I would respectfully and adamantly disagree with that. The people in the rural areas have 5 county commissioners that they can call and do call frequently. You're sitting in a great example of how the county is involved in the rural areas. Just take the city of Newberry alone in the last 15 years or so. The county has invested $7 million building 16 ball fields, Champions Park, millions of dollars for the facility that you're sitting in, millions of dollars purchasing the Canterbury Equestrian Center and renovating that into the new Fairgrounds and Equestrian Center, Ag and Equestrian Center. We're working closely with the city of Newberry on their wastewater treatment plant and the possible co-location of a meat processing plant on that property. And interestingly, there is not a single city commission of the 9 cities in Alachua County that have taken a vote in support of Representative Clements' bill. We work very well with the cities. Now, do we always agree? No. And the very nature of how cities and counties are constructed in Florida, there are going to be natural times when there is some friction. It's just the nature of the setup. But the county commission meets regularly with all of the small city commissions, as well as the city of Gainesville. We have very active members of the small cities and the rural area, the unincorporated area, that are in frequent contact with their county commissioners. And by the way, we've had multiple county commissioners that have not lived in the city of Gainesville. Currently, Commissioner Cornell does not live in the city. Commissioner Wheeler has homes out near, out in the, I guess it's the Alachua area, as well as Gainesville. In the past, Commissioner Hutchinson lived in the unincorporated area. Commissioner Byerly lived in Melrose. Commissioner Baird lived out in Hale Plantation. We've had many, many commissioners that have not been from Gainesville. And then the final point is that this would somehow make it easier to elect someone, let's say, from the Newberry area, that rural area. You're correct in terms of the population is in the urban core of this county. The only way you could draw a district that would guarantee the election of somebody from one of the small cities would be to draw a donut around the entire county that incorporated all of the outlying cities. And even then you would have to dip into the urban area to get enough people to, because the 5 districts have to be equal in population. There's no way to draw that district without going into that population center. And it would in fact be illegal to draw the donut-shaped district. It was discussed in the committee yesterday that the districts would essentially stay the same, which means the vast majority of people in every district will still come from where the heaviest concentration of the population is. All of the small cities combined don't even have 10% of the population of the county. I hear what you're saying and I respect what you're saying, and that's the argument that people are making to Representative Clemens. We think that the flaw in the argument or the narrative is that there is somehow no representation of the rural areas. I know for a fact, working with the commission every day, that what's going on in the outlying areas is constantly on their mind. And they've made pretty massive investments in the small cities and the unincorporated area in terms of infrastructure and the way the bed tax, the tourism tax is spent. We helped construct the Legacy Park in Alachua. We have community redevelopment agencies in many of the small cities. We help with grants, and we give a larger share of the gas tax for roads to the small cities than the state formula requires. So I would encourage you to look into what the county commission's involvement is in the rural area.
Yes.
I appreciate your comments. Yes, we do appreciate the amount of cooperation, money that has been spent by the county for recreation and other things, such as the center where we're meeting today. I certainly don't think that the vote will be a magic wand to elect other than those who run from these core districts. But the biggest concern that we have in the county, and that does not seem to be addressed, is the roads. There doesn't seem to be a lot of attention or funds appropriated by the county to take care of maintaining the roads that are in terrible condition in the county. And that is one of the major concerns that I hear from people in the rural areas. The broadband issue, which we discussed earlier, is one that seems there's progress being made on that, which is very appreciated. But the main issue that I see that people have such concern about is the lack of maintenance of the roads and money appropriated for them. I understand the small budget the county has, but it seems that maybe a different perspective of commissioners would have a different approach to how to fund county roads and maybe take funds away from some of the other pet projects or projects that appear more appealing to the core to help get the county's roads back into condition that they're not full of potholes. And those are just some of the responses that I would say.
Sure. And Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
You know, I'm always really glad when the issue of roads comes up because, first of all, I can tell you that this particular county commission, I have never seen one that has expressed at a public meeting a stronger commitment to finally tackle this issue. They commissioned a study and came up and presented to the county commission a roads management plan. And it's complicated, but you know, our funding source for the roads is supposed to be gas tax. And gas tax has never been sufficient to maintain roads. Something that many people don't know is back in the 80s, the state made a gift of state roads to counties all over Florida. Alachua County, we were gifted 200 miles of state roads, and we were given a penny gas tax to pay for the maintenance of those roads. And if you know anything about how much a mile of road costs, you realize that was incredibly insufficient then. With the advent of higher gas mileage and electric vehicles, it's getting lower and lower every year. So counties were left with this massive obligation without the funding to maintain it. The one funding source we were given was the infrastructure surtax. The infrastructure surtax, except unless you're a very small fiscally constrained county, it has to be a ballot referendum. 3 times the Alachua County Commission has said to the citizens, we do not have the money to maintain our road network. We can raise the money through a half penny or a full penny sales tax. It'll cost you, around $50, $60 a year to your tax bill. But the beautiful part of it is 30% or more of it will be paid by people buying gas who are visiting us from other places. 3 times the voters voted down the infrastructure surtax. And as you look at the demographics from the supervisor of elections area, the place where it failed was in the outside of the urban core. It was primarily in the rural areas that sales tax failed 3 times. Now, some people, as you said, some people say, well, no, we voted it down because we don't trust you with the money. And we want you to stop paying for your pet projects and use your money for roads. But when you look at what counties are actually responsible for, most of it is mandated, not discretionary. Over 70% of our budget goes to public safety. Over 70%. Fire rescue, court services, funding the judiciary, providing the facilities for the state's attorney's office, for the courthouses, for the public defender. Those are mandated services. We have to pay the county's portion of Medicaid. A sizable portion goes to social services that the counties are required to provide to our citizens. We have to match state and federal Medicaid dollars. We have very little discretionary funds. Somebody said to me once, well, if you would just abandon your environmental protection department, you could pave roads. And my response to that was, yeah, we could pave about 1.5 miles of road if we abolished our environmental protection department. We're never going to catch up on our $500 million road backlog with existing funds. There has to be an additional funding source. And unfortunately, the state didn't give counties the ability to just vote for that, to say 4/5 or even a supermajority vote to implement that sales tax. They said it had to be the voters. And when somebody said to me recently, the voters voted this down 3 times because they don't trust you with extra tax dollars, I pointed out that in 2000, voters taxed themselves for Alachua County Forever land conservation. In 2002, voters taxed themselves for the 1 year, 1 courthouse, 1 penny tax that built our criminal courthouse. In 2004, the voters taxed themselves for the Choices Indigent Healthcare program. In 2008 and 2016, they taxed themselves again for wild spaces, public places. And the school board has put taxes on the ballot about 5 times in that time period, and the voters voted yes. The voters have voted yes on every single surtax and voter tax initiative except roads in the last 22 years. But on March 1st, the county commission is having a meeting, and they are going to make a decision whether to put something on the ballot in 2022 to not just address road funding, but to renew wild spaces, public places, to also look at affordable housing, and to also look at public facilities like fire stations. This marks the first time we have ever done an omnibus 1 penny surtax to tackle the major issues that we don't have the funding to tackle through our normal property taxes and our normal general fund dollars. So you'll have another opportunity this fall, sir, to make a dramatic impact on our roads. And we hope you'll vote yes on that.
So other questions from the committee? So Mark, just some input. I think where the train wreck sort of happens on this, and I don't remember exactly, I was on the committee, and there's no doubt there's people with single interest in mind that put stuff for the charter review group. But the issue, I think, becomes somewhat that charter review group is eclectic. They go in somewhat with their own agendas, and that it doesn't seem like there's even deliberative consideration sometimes by that group. Now, that's the process that we have to deal with. But I want to say this last time, from a variety of different groups, my understanding was that they had more about more input in terms of considering for a ballot issue than they did almost anything else. But it was basically cast aside very quickly with very little discussion. So we can't change that. But at some point in time, it might be better that the Charter Review Commission allows the voting public to vote on it than to just act like that there's no interest and everybody else is stupid, would be my input. And let me tell you, you know my background in training county commissioners. There's a lot of train wrecks that I've seen across Florida on single member districts. So it's not a panacea by any means. At the same time, the county keeps growing. We're served with the 5-member commission. We're not the largest. I think Dade County, a commissioner in Dade County has a constituent base of over 100,000, maybe closer to 150,000. But there's a lot of things that are buried in there. And sometimes I think it's just that people don't get it. And then the other issue I would have is, so historically, we can't do anything about it. But the old method we used to operate on in the county was that if there was a subdivision that developed in the rural areas, the developer put in the roads to meet the county standards, and the county took over the care of the roads. So we're stuck now in the state of Florida where 85% of the road system, not including the federal interstates, is the responsibility of city and county government. Maybe a little bit more in some counties than others. But there are tools where you do it. I mean, the classic example is a community development district. So if you're going to put in a development in a rural area and bring in $400,000 homes and on up, why, the approach could be, we could approve that, but we're not assuming responsibility for the road. So you have to have your own community development district and tax yourself. That's what they do. So there's many ways to, and I'm not criticizing the commission or anything, but there's many ways to skin the cat. And I think the issue is that it just doesn't appear that the charter review commissions, and I've seen several because they occur every 10 years, and then the members on them appear to go in with some agendas that they have on their own. And then I think some people may question, are they really giving consideration? So maybe sometimes it's just better that the people vote on it, because I'm not sure it would pass anyway. But that's just my input.
No, and I hear what you're saying, and it's something I hear frequently. And just to address a couple of your points, I've been very involved in the last 2 charter review commissions. My staff has been involved in videotaping them and making them live to the public. And I would respectfully disagree a little bit with the characterization that they simply dismiss this and don't discuss it. Single member districts are, in my 2 charter review experiences, are the most discussed item. The very determined group of people that are active are advocates for single member districts show up in force at the Charter Review Commission. Now, when you put their relative numbers in the context of a county with 270,000 people, it's very easy for a handful of people to sound like they are representing many more people than they are actually representing. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They have worked very hard to try to convince the county commission and the Charter Review Commission to do this. They have been unsuccessful at that. Now, the political reality of a Charter Review Commission is they're appointed by the county commission. And much like Joe Biden is unlikely to appoint a conservative to the Supreme Court any more than Donald Trump was likely to appoint a progressive to the Supreme Court, Charter Review Commissions tend to reflect the commissions that appoint them. Although the commissioners did make it a point to, I believe there were 2 or 3 this time that were not of the progressive ilk, for want of a better phrase. But there's no doubt that in general, the Charter Review Commission reflects the commission that appoints them. And that's why, though, the charter laid out the third way to do it. Roll up your sleeves and do the work. The idea that, there have been many conservative commissioners on the county commission in just my time here. Chuck Clemens, who's running this bill, was a county commissioner in the 90s. That was back when he was a Democrat. He ran for legislature as a Democrat one time and lost, and converted to being a Republican and won. He was a conservative county commissioner. Our beloved Lee Pinkeson, who I worked with for 16 years as a county commissioner, he was a Democrat, but he was a conservative Democrat, and great advocate for the rural areas, lives in Newberry, has his farm in Newberry. Sue Baird, as recently as 2010, beat Cynthia Chestnut for a seat on the county commission. But in recent years, there have not been strong conservative candidates put up, it seems. And the advocates for this bill do not seem to want to roll up their sleeves and do the signature petition process. They can go right around the Charter Review Commission and the county commission. If 10% of the people in this county, not even the people, the registered voters in this county, think this is a good idea. But I think it's somewhat telling that they tried the signature process one time and were unsuccessful. So the question becomes, how do you change the county's constitution, the county's charter? Should it be easy, or should it require some hard work? And we think it should require some hard work. As to the districts, it's interesting that at large is the default form of county government in the state of Florida. The state statute requires county commissions to be at-large commissioners unless there's a deliberate move to change that system. And the majority of counties in Florida are our form of government. Dixie County, Gilchrist County, Levy County, Marion County, our surrounding counties, most counties have our form of government. Now, to follow the logic of what Representative Clemens is trying to do, what he's basically saying is, let's have the minority parties in counties in Florida. Why don't we go from 67 counties to 100 and whatever? I have a fine arts major, so I don't do math. Double 67, and if you're the minority in a county, what you should do is you should get your representative to run a bill to put single member districts on the ballot, and convince them that if that's successful, that you figure out a way to get someone from your party elected. In our view, this is a manipulation of the county's charter and yet another manipulation of the voting system in the state of Florida, which, by the way, is actively being attacked by other legislation in Tallahassee this session. After what was described by election officials in Florida as the cleanest election in the history of Florida, this last election, elections are being futzed with in a major way in Tallahassee. And now it's happening from Tallahassee. They're even trying to do that in a local county commission makeup. And we just think it's an assault on home rule, that it's completely political in nature, that it's about trying to figure out how to get a candidate from a certain party elected. And we feel like that's an invasion. That's a home rule attack. And I don't know if I covered all your points, Mr.
Well,
Chair.
and I don't necessarily disagree with all that, but the charter review, obviously those people need to get kudos for serving on that committee. I mean, they spend lots of hours, lots of times, sometimes on what seems pretty mundane. But I mean, I think you've got some input on maybe what people are feeling. Maybe you could address one other thing, because we've talked with Commissioner Alford. So the county was making a change in some of the road fund allocations where they were going to put more emphasis on miles traveled rather than trips, was our understanding. And Commissioner Alford has visited with us on that several times, but it hadn't been worked out. Has the formula been worked out on the allocation of the gas tax?
I am definitely not a subject matter expert on the intricacies of that. I know that there has been a lot of conversation. You know, there is a state formula, and I think one of the things that, you know, the county should be commended for is they have never just been heavy-handed and said, this is the state formula, this is how much we have to give everyone, and, you know, case closed. They have always tried to let the smaller cities kind of work with each other and figure it out. I am somewhat familiar with what you're talking about, but I do not have that kind of at the forefront of what I've been working on. So I'm not quite sure where we are with that, but I could certainly, you know, I'd be happy to work with Ken on your committee and see about getting back to you with that information.
I think it would be interesting, because the proof of the pudding will be the results from it. So if there was some type of slight reallocation, what did it do in terms of shifting funds and miles paid, or whatever the case? Because the bottom line on the road issue, as I think you're well aware, is it's never going to get better with the system we have in the state of Florida, where you're on a flat basis. And, you know, we've seen that when gas prices got high, people didn't travel as much. Fuel efficient cars came up, they started traveling more, but we never have enough money to keep up with the roads. And part of it is the transportation system for the delivery of goods and services, the supply chain that they talk about, and different things like that. But, you know, it just doesn't seem like we move forward on a lot. And there's probably got to be more innovative thinking on how that happens.
Well, I would suggest, though, that no amount of juggling the existing funding is ever going to make a serious dent in terms of catching up. The only solution is massive amounts of funding for, and that's not just Alachua County, as you mentioned. It's not only the state of Florida; it is nationwide. There has never been enough money dedicated to taking care of the roads. Some of our neighbors in European countries do it completely differently. I mean, maintaining roads and mass transportation train systems and frankly, internet service is considered an absolute, you know, it's like you can't do anything until you fix the hole in your roof kind of mentality over there in some of those countries. And, you know, I was in Hong Kong not too long ago. I was on a train traveling through a mountain, and I was downloading a movie and it took me 11 seconds to download the movie on my device going through a mountain in Hong Kong. That's how fast the internet service was there, because they had repeaters all through the tunnel. And it was government infrastructure. It was like FDR taking on the interstate highway system. This is an absolute essential, and it's too important to kind of leave in the hands of 1,000 different companies to try to work it out. It was considered absolute necessity. And I think that's ultimately what the roads need. But in the state of Florida, the way our taxing system evolved, you basically you had a state that was trying to attract people. They said, okay, no income tax, property tax, but you get a homestead exemption. They've continued to expand homestead exemptions. And they give you a tool for roads, but it has to be predicated on voters saying yes to it. And so it's very difficult. And you mentioned gas tax. It doesn't matter in Alachua County if gas is $1 a gallon or $5 a gallon. They don't let us index it. We get the same 11 cents, whether it's $5 a gallon or $1 a gallon.
Right.
And the state of Florida does index it. They give themselves the ability to index it. And that's why Newberry Road always looks great. The state roads look great. They have plenty of funding for the state roads. But you're right. They one of the reasons they can maintain them to that level is they turned over so many of the roads to cities and counties.
Yeah, so my last comment, and I think it's appropriate as your director of communications, is, I think one of the things that's been talked about by counties in Florida forever is that you get a tax bill and it says Alachua County, tax. And basically, when you look at that bill, it looks really, really large. But if you look at what's on there from county government, it's only about 60% of it. So there's a lot of counties that's tried different ways. And you went through the litany of how the money is used in Alachua County. And it didn't change things overnight, but it helped people understand things a lot better. But I think it was Lake County. They first of all, they took that what the tax bill was. They had a large $1 bill. And they said, this much is county, this much isn't. Okay, so they got 40 cents lopped off. Then they got court services, 7 cents of every dollar, blah, 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 blah. All of a sudden, 80 cents of what was left, or 80% of what was left was gone. That's your discretionary funding. But, it's tough for people to understand that because they see the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 bill and they say, oh, it's Alachua County. And
yeah.
There's got to be some way made on that, on educating the populace on that discretionary versus required mandated funding, as well as a huge portion of that bill is not the counties.
I promise you, I'm gonna push that out again this year. We've actually done that exact dollar bill chart. We do that every year in our budget book, the same chart you're talking about. Counties frequently use that, and you're absolutely right. I frequently have to explain when somebody says Alachua County has the highest property taxes in the state. I will frequently gently correct and say, Alachua County government is in the middle of the pack in terms of property tax millage rates in the state of Florida. And you're right, some people don't understand that you've got the library district, you've got the school board, which raises almost as much money as the county alone. You've got the sheriff's MSTU on there. You've got, if you live in a city, you've got your city millage rate in there. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of pieces, and thank you for the reminder. That's not something we can do a few times and then let go. That's something we have to put out regularly. And I'll tell you what, another thing that sometimes people look at me in disbelief, but the one thing that people in Florida, sometimes it wouldn't hurt to be reminded, is when you look at the total tax burden, what you pay for everything, sales tax, income tax, everything. Of the 50 states, Florida is the 5th lowest tax state out of 50 states when you look at everything that you pay taxes for. And people who've never lived in a state where there's income tax, you know, they don't understand that more states fund themselves through sales tax and income tax than through property tax. And we've got it really good when you look at total tax burden, although, you know, if you live here and that's all you've kind of been exposed to, I understand that it seems like it's a lot of money. But relatively speaking, Florida is a very low tax state.
Well, it's a constant education program. Any other questions from the committee, Larry Hall?
I just wanted to make one comment and ask an additional question. One of the things that I see, and a lot of people maybe don't understand, is when you look at the tax base for Alachua County, when you take all the property that is owned by the universities, by the colleges, you take the lands that have been put in conservation, and that's why I hear most complaints, is the county, and those are dedicated funds allocated by voters for acquiring environmental lands, et cetera. They can't be used for roads or other things, but when they look at those lands that are coming off the tax rolls, which now cost the county to maintain, when you narrow down to actually the land with the ag exceptions that are placed there, you have a relatively small tax base in which to raise the money for the county. That's one of the things that I see. The question I have goes back to the impact fees, and I haven't looked at it in a long time, but does the county not collect road impact fees? And I understand they have to be used in that particular district. It can't be used in a rural area for a subdivision that's big impact fees that may be on the border of the city. What is the status of the impact fee structure in the county at this time?
You know, I have to be honest with you, I'm not an expert on impact fees. I can tell you that, and let me backtrack a little bit to what you were saying previously. There's a common belief that land conservation somehow reduces the tax base in a significant way. But the fact of the matter is the vast majority of lands that we've purchased through the voter-approved conservation funds that, you know, voters 3 times have said, yes, we want you to protect our natural spaces and our wildlife corridors and our drinking water and all of the things that are protected when you conserve land. The vast, vast majority of those lands were ag lands. They were zoned ag and paid little or no property tax to begin with. And what study after study has shown is those properties actually increase the overall value of the lands that are in close proximity. So there's no doubt that we have a smaller than normal tax base here, but I'll tell you what is the biggest issue is the government properties that are not paying taxes, particularly the University of Florida. And I'm not bashing the University of Florida, that's just the reality of it. They are tax exempt. Santa Fe is tax exempt, and every new satellite office is tax exempt. And some places have payment in lieu of taxes that they give to areas that have heavy concentration of non-taxable government properties, but we're not one of them. So there's that. As far as impact fees, you know, what I can tell you, what I do know about impact fees is the jury is out. Growth does not pay for itself. When you look at all of the things that come, all of the expenses that come with growth, the additional property tax that you collect does not pay for the strain on government services. And that's why I think that the Alachua County Commission has believed that impact fees are fair. You mentioned, and you're correct, that they have to be used to benefit the general area where they're collected in. But I have to be honest, Ken may be able to answer this question better than I am. I am certainly not an impact fee expert. I apologize for that, but we could certainly get back to you if you if this group ever wants to do a deep dive into impact fees.
Sure, Ben.
The county doesn't. Transportation fee, and that is charged for new development in the county. As those funds are collected, they are then applied to different road projects. For example, one of the projects that's done very recently was the 8th Avenue extension down to Coyote. Funding was used. The challenge is getting enough money in that fund to be able to fund any kind of significant revenue. So a lot of the projects are smaller projects like sidewalk improvements or things like that. But short answer, yes, we do have more of it.
But with the fee that you're discussing, that can be used anywhere. It's not tied directly to the area which is collected.
It has to be extended within the county's provided to districts for multimodal transportation. So the funds that are collected have to be expended in the district that they are in.
So the only funding for roads in the rural area is from the sale, the gas sales tax, county's portion, or a funding that would be approved by the voters.
Yeah, gas tax and multimodal mitigation fees.
But that can only be used in the area. That doesn't help out in the county on road over here to Archer.
Yeah,
Stuff at the bottoms.
it can. I mean, there's, like I said, oftentimes there's just not enough money to make a substantial improvement out. A lot of times, I know I'm not a transportation planner, and it's not my area of expertise, but I know we've done projects like that in numbers. That's why the Board of County Commissioners has a long-range capital plan for the roadway projects that they like to do if they ever have the funding or opportunity to do that. And there are a number of projects in the world that are part of that capital group.
Thank you.
So can I ask a follow-up on this?
Sure, sure.
Off topic, but like in Archer, we drive in basically two-lane road the whole way, or at least most of the way in town. And there are a lot of developments going in currently. Around that road, before it even gets to 4 lanes. If the road management strategy doesn't account for the cost of this new road, like you were saying, like, it never pays for itself. Isn't that something to be concerned about for approving the road?
It's absolutely, and I mean, we're talking about Archer, as a state. So our funds we collect from transportation mitigation dollars are not to go.
But you guys approved the road on Archer. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
But you have levels of travel, like categories in terms of trips that identify how much the road is used and what the flow is and all that type of stuff. Didn't they used to have an A, B, C, D category?
Yeah, that's kind of a traditional level of service concept. Levels of pain is great free flow traffic. That is very long.
But the process has become, process as Florida is growing and the communities is growing, is instead of, and since the money is very limited, is you don't go from a D to a B, you go from a B to a C to a D So you go from maybe sort of free flowing, I can't fathom that, down where the standard of service just gets lower all the time.
Yeah, and used to be, if the level of service of a particular road fell down to that level of failure, then there could be no more development approved along that road. That's the concept of transportation concurrency. Several years ago, the state did away with mandated transportation concurrency, so Alachua County also does not have that traditional transportation concurrency anymore, where, development will essentially stop if there is no road capacity to support it. You do more of an area-wide level of service concept now based on our multimodal transportation districts. And those areas are fairly long. So I guess that's kind of a long way around saying segment by segment level of service type currency.
Hey, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
are there any other questions? We're kind of going off into, don't get me wrong, I love talking about growth management, but are there any other questions on the legislative process? I'm going to have to take off in a second.
so right now, your bottom line summary is, as with many local bills, you expect it to pass, and it will be on the ballot in November. That would be your best guess.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain of that.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for your time again, Mark.
You're welcome. And thank everyone for the thoughtful questions and for an opportunity to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions you want to ask while we're done?
Just a point of clarification, just because I'm kind of interested in how it's building up. You're basically saying your hands are tied by state, like the state saying you can't limit growth in these areas now because of, I know we're saying multimodal, but there is one way to get into Archer, like you're gonna drive unless you got a horse.
Right, I mean, and the state several years ago essentially said that you don't have to do transportation concurrency anymore. In other words, the roads do not have to necessarily be available concurrent with and at the time of new development. And so with that change in the state law, Alachua County also followed suit and eliminated that kind of concurrency concept. I don't know that our hands are necessarily tied. I mean, we would have to make a significant change in our policies and our comprehensive plan and how we handle new development as it relates to roads. I'll say that. So there are probably other options besides what we're doing now. I don't think.
So the county could go back to concurrency for road issues on the new development if they chose to.
I think that would be a possibility.
Not popular with the developers, but
Yeah, I mean, it would require a significant change to the county's comprehensive plan to do that, which would have to be.
but also the state still reviews those, don't they?
The state reviews them, and they're not heavily involved like they used to be. We don't all get comments from the state on
Other questions? So, March 10th, what I would like to ask is from you and Regina, since we'll be meeting at Grace Night in March, is that you send probably a little bit more detailed information to make sure everyone understands about the parking situation, the app, if they want to take advantage of it, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And when we send the material out, I would just encourage everyone to plan to take a little bit more time, get downtown, get parked and get in. And so we're going to meet in the auditorium, the annex part.
Right.
What I call the annex part. Right?
We'll be breaking that conference down the hall. In the auditorium.
Right. So does everybody know where that's at? When you go up the stairs, you take a right, I think, to go to the auditorium. You're gonna go to the left, or you can still go straight ahead. Straight ahead. In the hall and then turn left.
So it is on the second floor.
Yes, it is on the second floor. Okay, any other business before the committee?
What's on our agenda for tomorrow?
So, we have a host of issues that we're going to go back and address. Is there anyone specifically that someone would like to have come up for that meeting? Yeah, I was gonna see if we had the list readily available. I'll tell you the one that comes to mind for me. I'm not sure how big of a pressing issue it was, but it was one that we had a fair amount of discussion about. We'll see if Ken can pull that out.
Stopping one,
I think they're trying to find something on the education scope and size and importance of agriculture and agriculture.
That was one that came up that was a possibility. I'll tell you the other one that came up, and it came up, I believe it was Miss Warner who raised the issue. It related to the property taxes in rural areas, and maybe someone from the property tax collector's office. And I don't know if the new tax collector has an ag specialist, but they've always had in the past, Cindy. Tax collector, excuse me, not property.
Yes.
So that was one issue that I knew that we discussed.
so there's this item up there now. So the property appraiser's office discussed this.
Yeah.
Ask somebody. If somebody available,
Yeah, I think that's one of the last ones that we had a pretty robust discussion on that we wanted to get on the agenda relatively quickly. Does that sound like a topic that would be of interest to folks? So we can proceed with that. And it should be convenient since we're downtown for that office as well. So. Any other items of business? A motion to adjourn? Moved by Larry, second. Second by Cindy. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.